We're going to hear from 4 people. Emma Fricky, who is with the National Center on Deafblindness, and she's headed this up with organizing everything. And then we're going to hear from 3 people from the state of Tennessee. Holly Allen is the program director for the Tennessee EHDI program. Lisa Elkins is a parent of a child with Stickler syndrome. And then Dana Kahn is the project coordinator for the Tennessee Deafblind Project at Vanderbilt University. So I'm going to let them share a little more about themselves with you and hand it over to Emma.
Thank you so much, Mandy. Hi, everybody. My name's Emma Fricky. I used to be Nelson, if any of you are confused. And we are so thrilled to have all of you here today to talk about the collaboration and opportunities between the Deafblind Network and NCHAM, Hands and Voices, EHDI, and all the rest of you who are here. What we're really hoping is during our conversation today, we want you to think about your state deafblind program, your EHDI program, and then what Lisa's story brings up for you in terms of how to maximize outcomes for families. Lisa's story, we hope you'll jot down questions that you might have or comments you may have about the approach that was taken around the collaboration and then the processes that were able to be in place for her son, Leo. And primarily, we're hoping that you'll increase your understanding of how these collaborative partnerships between state organizations can create positive outcomes and engagement for families. And then also just an awareness of this network and then resources that are available to support all of you. As I said, I'm Emma Fricky, and I work for the National Center on Deafblindness. I lead the Identification and Referral initiative. And I'm going to pass it over to Dana to introduce the other participants. Or not presenters, sorry.
Thank you, Emma, and thank you to everyone for having us here today. This is really exciting to get to share how these collaborations have worked and the impact that they have made. You will be hearing from one of our amazing parents, Lisa Elkins. We pre-recorded her video since she has a lot of mom duties and picking up kids and taking them to school. So you will get to see that, and we are so appreciative of her sharing her journey with Leo. And as Emma said, my name is Dana Kahn, and I am the project coordinator for the Tennessee Deafblind Project at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. And we'll talk a little bit more about what the state deafblind projects offer. And I will have Holly introduce herself.
Thank you, Dana. My name is Holly Allen, and I am the Tennessee Early Hearing Detection and Intervention Coordinator, often shortened to EHDI. And I'm going to talk with Dana about how we collaborate today. So thank you.
Thank you. So what you see on the screen right now, I'm going to go through a set of pictures that Lisa shared with us, again, about Leo's journey from birth. And then you'll hear her reference back to them in her video. So in the first picture on the left is a picture of Leo a few days after birth. In this picture, Leo is laying on a hospital cot, sleeping on his side with many wires attached to him. And then on the right-hand side is a picture of Leo during a follow-up hearing test when he left the NICU. In this picture, Leo is sleeping in a woman's arms, and they are sitting in a medical office. Next slide. On this slide, on the left is pictured is Leo at 5 months. He is sitting in a booster seat with his new glasses and his hearing aids. He has a bit of apprehension on his face. The world is new to him. It's like he was seeing and hearing for the first time. And then in the middle is a picture of Leo, only 8 months of age, already in auditory verbal therapy. He is sitting at a table using a toy for listening and spoken language play-based exercises. And isn't he the cutest? I just have to say that. And on the right, in the next photograph, shows Leo sitting on the floor at 16 months of age, still plugging away in auditory verbal therapy sessions. In this picture, he is popping bubbles during another verbal exercise. And then the next slide. On the left, in February 2020, Elisa found a conference that was being held in Nashville for parents of children with hearing loss, sponsored by the EHDI and CARE project. So seen here, you see her Elisa's agenda, registration, and notes. And then on the right is a picture of Leo at age 2 years, standing in the hallway at T.C. Thompson Children's Hospital, about to walk into a therapy session. So we're going to play her video, and you'll hear a little bit more about their story.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Elkins. I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee, with my husband, 2 stepdaughters, and our 3 children. 4 of these 5 kids are girls, and our youngest, being our only boy, is named Leo. Leo is 4.5. We refer to him as our mighty lion. Leo has Stickler syndrome, a progressive connective tissue disorder that causes deafblindness. Here's a picture of Leo a few days after birth. In this picture, Leo is laying on a hospital cot, sleeping on his side with many wires attached to him. They are hooked up to many different monitors. On his cot, there are pictures that his sisters drew of a lion with his name, hence where the mighty lion name was born. When Leo was born on February 1st, 2019, he could not breathe on his own when laying on his back. He presented with a jaw that was malformed, which would cause his tongue to fall into the back of his throat when laying on his back, and he would choke. He also presented at birth with a cleft palate. Both things had to be surgically fixed in order for him to eat and breathe. Since we had no family history of these issues, a geneticist was assigned to determine if there was a genetic cause or if this was an isolated event. It was with the results of the EHDI newborn screening, along with his newborn vision screening, that confirmed loss for both hearing and vision. The results of these screenings helped our geneticists narrow down what type of syndrome Leo could possibly have. Blood tests were then conducted to confirm that it was in fact Stickler. Here is a picture of Leo during a follow-up hearing test when we left the NICU. In this picture, Leo is sleeping in a woman's arms, and they are sitting in a medical office. Baby Leo is connected to many wires placed on his head and in his ear that are hooked up to hearing detection machine. The woman in the picture is obviously not me. She is my best friend of over 35 years, and she flew into town to see us after I shared just how terrified I was from receiving Leo's diagnosis. I felt beyond helpless and ill-equipped to take care of my own son. No one was giving me a guidebook on how to help him, and there was no manual or YouTube video that my husband falls back to very frequently for what to do next. So what did I do? I just started researching nonstop. The more I researched online, the more I read about that critical window of a child's early years. I learned that between the ages of birth to 5, the brain undergoes the most rapid growth and development in a human's lifetime. This is a period that a child is most responsive to intervention. I did not know this, never had to know this. Reading this statement lit a fire in me. I guess you could say the mama lion was awakening. The more I read and the more I learned, the more I knew I had to take action to get Leo the support he needed early. It's honestly the only thing in this situation that I felt I could control. But what exactly does getting him help look like? This was another one of those what in the world do I do moments. I wanted to take the time to share what I learned through my experience and what I deem to be the 3 most important components for us to create a plan of action for support for Leo. And it really can be applied to any child with special needs. First and foremost, hands down, was
screening and assessments. This is where the early identification happens. As I mentioned earlier, not only did screening help our geneticist get the answers that she needed, we also were able to figure out what Leo's immediate needs were. Most importantly, it confirmed the fact that he needed hearing aids and high prescription glasses to be able to see and hear us. Because of these early screenings, we were able to get these things for him by the time he was 5 months old. Pictured here is Leo at 5 months, sitting in a booster seat with his new glasses and his hearing aids. He has a bit of apprehension on his face, as you can see. The world was new to him. It's like he was seeing and hearing for the very first time at 5 months old. You can't get support services or medical devices when you don't know what your child needs. Screenings help identify these areas of concern. This begins with orders from your pediatrician or your child specialist. If these medical providers aren't ordering tests, and I'm looking at you, parents and caregivers, you need to be requesting them. In our case, the plus side of Leo having comorbid issues presenting at birth was that our doctors did order testing because they needed to figure out what was going on. That's not always the case. Sometimes the only way these things can be brought to light is by parent feedback. For example, noticing that your child isn't responding to sound the way their siblings are or the way other children are. Bring up your concerns to your doctor. Parents and caregivers, you know your child better than anyone. I hear it all the time back to me. I always thought it was so cliche, but it is so very true. You have the right to have screening done if you have any feeling that there may be an issue. The second component is creating an individualized plan of therapy and intervention. Thankfully for us, the identification of Leo's deafblindness from the screening test showed that he would be eligible for early intervention services provided by the state, which in Tennessee is known by its acronym as TEIS. I contacted them, a representative came to our home to do their own screening and interviews, and he was approved. From there, we were assigned a case manager who helped coordinate the support services he needed. Here's another picture of Leo, this time 8 months of age, already in auditory verbal therapy. He is sitting on a table using a toy for listening and spoken language-based exercises. This next photograph shows him sitting on the floor at 16 months of age, still plugging away in auditory verbal therapy sessions. In this picture, he's popping bubbles during another verbal exercise. In addition to the AVT therapy, Leo received occupational, developmental, and eventually physical therapy when we noticed later that this was something he needed. All of these support services are out there and ready to be utilized. We would have never received it through TEIS beginning at such an early age if we had not had Leo properly screened. The third component, and in my opinion, is really the most important, is finding supportive organizations. Beyond therapy, there are so many resources out there. The problem is, in many cases, no one is going to hand you a list of them. I waited for that. It never happened. This is where I encourage you, parents and caregivers, to research what is out there. Ask your professionals. Compile a list of those resources and support organizations to help your families. Google. It has been a treasure chest of resources for me all over the country. I found the National Family Association for Deafblind that way, and I'm actually now part of their national board. In February of 2020, I found a conference by Googling that was being held in Nashville for parents of children with hearing loss, sponsored by the Tennessee EHDI and the CARE Project. I signed up. On the screen is a picture of my table sitting at that conference with my registration, agenda, and my notes. I went alone. I had no idea what I was doing, but I did it. There were exhibitors who had tables set up with information, and that's where I met Dana Kahn from the Tennessee Deafblind Project. They have been one of the biggest allies of support in Leo's journey, even recently being involved in his transition from early intervention into the school system. That's a perfect example of these support organizations that are out there, collaborating together. You've just got to take initiative to find them. In addition to that, I have met parents nationally through joining these organizations, parents that are going through the same things I am. That feeling of being alone that I mentioned earlier, I don't have that feeling anymore. I may not know anyone locally in my town that has a deafblind child, but they are out there, and these connections have been invaluable. I would have never had them otherwise. In summary, it is these three things that I know have made a world of difference in early outcomes for Leo. 1 was the screening and early detection. 2, starting therapy and intervention early. And 3, seeking out support organizations. It all stems back to these things, starting as early as possible. Here's a picture of Leo at the ripe old age of 2 years, standing in a hallway at T.C. Thompson Children's Hospital, about to walk into a therapy session. He's looking down at the design on the floor, and above him is a sign for Children's Therapy Services. Seeing this picture reminds me of the countless hours I have spent in those therapy offices. I want to be clear and honest with all of you that everything I share today is not a magical cure. This road has not been easy. I have shed more tears than I thought imaginable. There were many, many periods that I was seeing no improvement with Leo's ability to communicate, that his eyesight continued to get worse, that we struggled with behavioral and major sensory issues that were disruptive to everyone in his life. But we kept going. We kept returning to appointments, and I kept getting him help. It was the only thing I could control. I remember so clearly an appointment with Leo's ENT at Vanderbilt when Leo was 3 years old. The doctor began the appointment asking how things are going, like he always does. And I started sobbing. It had been a very difficult few months, and at the time, I felt that we weren't seeing any improvement like we should. After everything I had been doing, providing him, I was defeated, tired, and scared. When I was sharing these concerns, the doctor stopped me. He knelt down in front of me, which no provider has ever done. And he said, "Miss Elkins, look at me in the eyes. Leo may never speak. I need you to know that I'm seeing firsthand how you are providing him with every possible support available. And that is enough." I needed to hear that. And I'm sharing this in case there are any parents, caregivers, or even professionals that need to hear it too. If you are providing a special needs child with the screenings, therapies, and support resources that are available, you are doing enough. There will be days with big wins. There will be days with no wins. But in the future, you will see the results of this work. I want to leave you with a short video clip that gives you a glimpse of where Leo is today. He and I are on the floor practicing speech sounds. He's wearing his glasses, but he's not wearing his hearing aids as we were doing a bit of lip reading practice. Thankfully, I had his iPad on the floor next to us, and I was able to capture this incredible moment. I heard 3 words that I had been waiting to hear for over 4 years. Who knows if I would have heard this and so many other words now had we not had the support services we got. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I love Mama. You say it. I love Mama.
I love Mama.
Wow, I think everyone here would have to say what an amazing journey they had. And especially, those are the words that everyone wants to hear. And I am so appreciative to Lisa and to her family for sharing their story with us, their experiences, and the honesty that she used in talking to parents and professionals in the room today. I would love now to have Holly Allen come on, and she's going to talk a little bit about some of the collaborations that we have had between our EHDI and State Deafblind Project. And then I'll come back on and talk a little more.
Thank you, Dana. We recognize that partnership and collaboration are vital to the work that we do in supporting our children and families in Tennessee. The Tennessee EHDI program is fortunate to have built strong partnerships with organizations across the state and the country, including the Deafblind Project. In Tennessee, Dana represents the Deafblind Project on the Tennessee EHDI Advisory Committee, and this collaboration provides an opportunity to share knowledge and experiences with other partners and stakeholders to strengthen our system of care and to ensure that the children and families we are serving receive the appropriate care and intervention as early as possible to ensure the best outcomes for them. And in addition to our advisory committee, Dana also serves on our learning community. And we were lucky enough this past summer to have her present to the group on the services of the Tennessee Deafblind Project. And the presentation was extremely well received. And I heard feedback from many of our partners and our stakeholders who were delighted to hear that many of the families they are serving could qualify for services. And as Lisa mentioned in her presentation, we host Parent Professional Collaborative and Family Retreat in partnership with the CARE Project. And these conferences, we bring together families and professionals, and we provide an opportunity for families to link with professionals and resources that could be beneficial to their family, just like what Lisa and Leo were able to accomplish at the CARE Project event. The Tennessee EHDI program, we are always happy to support our stakeholders and our families by sharing information about resources and educational opportunities that could benefit the children and families that we're serving. We recognize that these resources are an invaluable asset and are essential for the success of our activities and our programs. And I would just like to share that in March of this year at the National EHDI Conference, I had the pleasure of attending an instructional session that was led by Dana and other members or other representatives from the National Deafblind Project. And the session focused on classroom and life experiences of children with complex needs. We participated in interactive, hands-on activities and heard from various professionals who discussed methods and strategies for assisting these children through different scenarios that they may face. And to say that it was a highlight of the conference for me would certainly be an understatement. And I recognize that I couldn't do the job that I do, and we certainly wouldn't be able to serve the babies in Tennessee the way that we do without partnerships with organizations like the Deafblind Project. So thank you.
Thank you, Holly. We are so happy to be able to collaborate with our state deafblind EHDI, our state EHDI, and the work that they do. As Holly discussed, there are a variety of ways in which EHDI and state deafblind projects can collaborate. These collaborations not only benefit both of our programs, but also the families and babies that we work with. As a result of serving on each program's advisory committees, trainings, family conferences, and the EHDI learning community, babies have been identified as deaf-blind and referred to our program in our state. You also heard Lisa in her video emphasize the importance of newborn hearing screenings and assessment, follow-up, family support, individualized services, and resources. By strengthening the infrastructure to coordinate services across the state, we are better equipped to improve language acquisition outcomes for children who are deaf and hard of hearing. State deafblind projects work to help support communication development and outcomes through the partnership with early intervention professionals and families. We'll now talk a little about what supports and resources state deafblind projects can offer. Next slide. Every state has a deafblind project. They are federal grant funded by the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs. We are what's called a Technical Assistance and Dissemination Grant. All of our services are free to families, educators, and other professionals of individuals from birth to 21. So as Lisa mentioned, once we coordinated with her and met at the CARE conference, and we met Leo, he was under the age of 3 at that time. And so as he transitioned into preschool, we were able to work with his team, provide training and support to be able to help him access the general education curriculum in his classroom. And then we'll be able to go on with him up to age 21 as he progresses through the transition age. We provide consultations anywhere and everywhere that family professionals need us, whether it be at home, in the school, or in the community. We provide resources, support, and information based on the individualized needs of the child and of the family. There's lots of great resources online through the National Center on Deafblindness and other agencies such as EHDI, their local Hands and Voices, so we can definitely connect with families. We help teams look at appropriate, individualized instructional strategies. Each of these is unique to the children that we work with. We provide workshops, trainings, and conferences. And we can also help connect families to other families that have a child similar to theirs in the area, or so many of the symptoms or conditions we work with may be really rare or low incidence, so then we can help to find another family member for families to talk to. We do provide the state child find on deafblindness, so every state conducts the deafblind census to make sure that we're recognizing the number of students birth to 21 in the state who have combined vision and hearing loss. And then if any of you would like to be connected with your state deafblind project, there's a link at the bottom, and you'll have access to this PowerPoint to again connect with with each state deafblind project. And next slide, Emma.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lisa and Holly and Dana, for sharing your story and experiences. Lisa, I don't know if you're still here or if you've gone to pick up your kids, but you shared such an incredible story. And it was so inspiring to see the joy on your face and hear the laughter from Leo when he says, "I love Mama," for the first time. And when you think of how many hours you put in, Lisa, to get to that moment, and how many Leo did too, and then all the support services that wrapped around you, it's just really inspiring to think about. So thank you for sharing your experience with all of us. Okay, so this will not be as fun. I am so glad that you're all still here, though, and we are going to back up just a little bit and talk about the uniqueness of deafblindness. And this will be brief, so I'm going to talk both about deafblindness and then short bit about data around deafblindness, and we'll have another opportunity in January to reconnect at a coffee chat where we'll be lucky enough to have our data and evaluation manager with us, Carly Rhodes, and she will share more specifically and answer any questions that you might have then. So as I go through the next few slides, here's what I hope will happen. I hope you guys can sit and just consider what would happen if Lisa hadn't been able to find the services and supports, or if those services and supports weren't available. And then what if Dana wasn't connected to Eddie and hadn't been at the CARE Project conference? And if these collaborations aren't happening yet in your state, don't worry, this is a great opportunity. We'll give you resources about how to make that happen. So as Dana mentioned in the last slide, there's that link you can click on. And there's both the identification of deafblindness through that screening and assessment that Lisa talked about, but then there's also the referral to state deafblind projects. And that link will connect you with people that can help you with all of those pieces and all of those questions you might have. And then, as Lisa said, early identification of hearing status as well as vision status will bring about the best outcomes for kids long term. So the earlier the better, connections are key, and no one can do it alone. Deafblindness is often thought of, we think of Helen Keller, so someone who's totally deaf and totally blind, but in actuality, it refers to any level of combined vision and hearing loss that significantly impacts the child's ability to get information from people, places, and activities around them. And these losses can cause developmental delays in the areas of language and communication, social emotional skills, cognition, adaptive self-help skills, and motor. A very small percentage of children are profoundly deaf and totally blind, but regardless of their levels of vision and hearing status, the earlier these children are identified, the earlier they'll receive services and supports that will maximize their access to the world. This access will provide opportunities for them to learn and grow using all the residual vision and hearing that they have. As Lisa said, the road will not always be smooth, and there will be ups and downs. But like Leo, the sooner the child is identified, the sooner those supports can be put in place. Identification is the first step, and as Lisa said, the second is connecting to specialists, including those who understand the unique needs of learners with deafblindness. So referrals to your state deafblind project will provide that opportunity for resources to be shared and for support to be provided to the whole team. As I mentioned, the percentage of children who are totally deaf and totally blind is very small. So in addition to the federal special education child count, so that's Part C and Part D that you all are familiar with, as Dana mentioned, the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs, also known as OSEP, OSEP, has authorized another child count that's specific to children who are deafblind. And they requested this count to begin back in 1986. So just as a quick difference, annually, there are less than 2,000 children with deafblindness, ages 3 to 21, who are reported on the special education child count with their primary disability category being deafblindness. On the other hand, there are over 10,000 on the deafblind child count. And this discrepancy is thought to be largely due to the fact that 90% have more than one additional disability. Consequently, the majority are not identified as deafblind on the special education child count, and their impact of their dual sensory loss might not be recognized or addressed. In order for a child to be counted on the deafblind project, they must be referred to the state deafblind project, which is what Dana talked about just a little bit. This graphic is 3 different concentric circles inside each other, and it gives a perspective of the low incidence nature of this population. So the large blue circle demonstrates the United States population of all the children in the United States. The yellow circle represents the special education population in the United States. And then the red circle, which is so small it has to be magnified to be seen, shows the children with deafblindness. And that's birth to 21. And this is from the 44th Annual Report to Congress on the National Deafblind Child Count. I know some of you have heard me say this before, but this really highlights the importance of partnerships, because for every family who has a child with deafblindness, even though it's tiny on this graph, that red dot is everything to that family, and it's their whole world. And it's so important that we remember that, and that we really work to make sure that those resources are available to them. This data is from the 2019 child count, so it's old data, and hopefully things will be able to be updated soon. But what I love about this, and what hopefully we will be able to update you with shortly for more recent data, is the variance in the percentage of the entire, let me think about how to phrase this correctly. I didn't write it down, and I'm not the data manager, as I said. Carly will be coming, so I sometimes get mixed up, so I want to be sure I say it correctly. But out of each state's full child count, this data is the percentage of those kids who are ages birth to 2 per state. And so you can see the red line is the average. That 6.2% of each state's child's count average is around, like I said, 6.2%. But there's higher ones and lower ones. And what this really highlights is the critical importance of reaching out across organizations and funding agencies within your state to figure out how to identify these children as early as possible and refer them to the projects. As you can see, some of them are as high as 18% of their total child count is kids birth to age 2. And then there are some that are at 0. And that is not the fault of any agency, either in any way, shape, or form. It's really about the fact that the more we're able to work together to figure out how to find these kids, the more we're able to report them on the child count, and then the more we're able to know about them and what they need and support those kids and families. This is one more graph that just shows, or table that just shows that low incidence also equals small numbers. As I said before, those numbers are very small, but this shows you how small. So these numbers are not national numbers. They're not state numbers, they are national numbers. And so we are slowly making progress in identifying them. But as you can see, nationally in 2019, there were 63 children under the age of 1 who were reported on the national child count. By the time they became 6, there were 523 nationally. And that's a pretty large increase. So we know that if we work together early, we can find them earlier. So now that you've seen that our numbers are so small, even though it's a small population, it's so important that we identify them early because their needs are so, so great. So a few tips to take away for identification and referral are that any child who is identified as deaf, hard of hearing should be evaluated for a loss in vision. Often that occurs around 6 months of age, but it can occur before that if there's, like in Leo's case, a genetic syndrome that's identified or other things that would point to a need for that. Evaluations should always be repeated regularly. I was just listening to the NCHAM podcast, Earworm, I think it's called, and the very first podcast episode talks about not late onset hearing loss, but late identified hearing loss, and it can be the same with vision. So really thinking about repeating those evaluations as often as needed, and also for kids who have very complex needs where assessment might be tricky, to really think about how to work with those evaluators to think about how maybe the information can come from many different people throughout the child's life to give some information about how that child sees, how that child hears, for a full picture of that kiddo. Additionally, like I said, I keep saying it requires partnership and collaboration. The more we work together, the better we do for those families and those kids. And then once a child is identified, like Dana said, that training can happen. So the training will be able to help the child learn how to use their residual vision and hearing. And then it also will be able to train people to learn those skills that support the child's unique learning needs in the areas of communication and language development, social emotional development, motor development, and then also how to increase that independence. When you get this presentation, you'll be able to click and explore these links. There are 5 links on this page of resources. The first one highlights the 4 Families website on the National Center on Deafblindness webpage. The second is also from the National Center on Deafblindness, and it talks about what services and organizations can be available to families. The one after that talks about causes of deafblindness, and the one below is the etiology code list. And what those are really talk about what those red flags are to keep an eye out for. For example, it talks about the common syndromes associated with deafblindness, the prenatal and postnatal complications that can arise that are associated with deafblindness, and it's a great resource for you to just take a quick look at and see what might be a red flag. And then the final one is a module. It just came out from the National Center. We're so thrilled. It was made in collaboration with some professionals across the United States and a lot of families. And it explores the foundations of early intervention with children who are deafblind, and then talks about how providers can best encourage their communication and concept development. Lessons include ways of expanding the child's world to more people, places, and things, as well as important strategies for supporting the transition to preschool. And so the module has 4 30-minute lessons that provide practical need-to-know information and strategies for working with infants and toddlers who are deafblind. And a new one is being created right now that focuses on communication development specifically and how to really support those targeted language outcomes, and how partnerships can happen within the child's team to really maximize that learning. All of these resources are free, and you can always contact me, of course, if you have questions. What we know about adult learning is that Zoom is hard and there's so much happening, and we're all in all of these sessions with each other all the time. And a way that I'm hoping you all can take some of this away is just to do this reflection activity before we open it up for questions. And so I'm hoping that you can just take a moment to jot down 3 things that you learned, 2 questions that you leave with, and 1 thing that you'll share with a team member. Okay, so while you're doing that, I just want to thank my co-presenters. I want to thank Lisa and Holly and Dana. I want to thank all of you for being here. This is, it really feels like an honor to be here. The EHDI conference is one of my favorites to be a part of, and all of the interactions I've had with so many of you at both Hands and Voices and at EHDI have helped me to grow so much in my understanding of early identification and referral. Even if I did come out a little awkward with the data part of my presentation, you all have helped me learn so much, and I'm so grateful. I also want to thank the interpreters and the captioner. And then I'm going to hand it over to you, Mandy, to open it up with questions.
Sure. Thanks, Emma, and other presenters. We are so grateful for you and all the great information that you shared. We have opened the Q&A box. If anybody has questions, we will take those now. One question is there a link for the early intervention module on the deafblindness that was mentioned? Was there a link to that?
Yes, this is Emma. I can put it in this webinar chat if that works for you. It's also going to be linked in the PowerPoint presentation as well.
Okay, great. while we are waiting for any other questions to come in, I may have missed this, and if I did, I apologize, but the links, the resources that you shared, will they show the state deafblind project? So if a person is looking to locate their state deafblind project, they will be able to click something and be connected?
Yes, Dana, do you want to talk about that at all?
Sure, yes. In the PowerPoint, there is a hyperlink, and you can click on it, and it'll take you to the National Center on Deafblindness webpage, and then you'll be able to locate your state when you go there, and it'll give you the contact for the state there. So they'll give you their email address along with their phone number for you to contact them. So definitely do that. And if you have trouble, you can, as Emma said, you can reach out to one of us, and we'll definitely get you to where you need to be.
And just for clarification purposes, is every state called like the Tennessee Deafblind Project, or do they have different names by state?
Great question. They have different names. It could be called, we're called the Tennessee Deafblind Project, but like Georgia, it's the Georgia Sensory Assistance Project. So the name may be a little different.
Okay, thank you.
But that will be on the webpage. When you go, it tells you the name of their project.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, we have a question asking, did you use hands-on or tactile communication before the baby or toddler was able to speak verbally? This is probably a question for Lisa, and I don't know that she's still on.
Yeah, that would definitely be a question for Lisa.
What I can say, and Dana, you can definitely expand on this, is that typically touch is such a huge part of interacting and building relationships with babies who are deafblind, really with any baby, of course, but even more important with kids who are deafblind. And so I imagine that if Lisa and Leo were connected with the TEIS and then also with your project, I can't imagine that wasn't a part of what they were using. And another really cool thing that I think her story highlights is how, just like Hands and Voices, the Deafblind Technical Assistance Network, we support families and kids where they are with whatever communication modes work for them. And so you can hear that Lisa was talking about auditory verbal therapy, and that's what their family chose, and then other families choose other modes, and we just are there to support whatever is best for the kids and family.
Thanks, Emma. So we have a couple more questions right now. Does anyone have suggestions on how to formalize referrals between EHDI and deafblind projects? I am a parent of a child with deafblindness, CHARGE syndrome, and also work for the Florida EHDI program. So I am very aware of our deafblind project and try to refer babies as I get them as newborns, but it is fairly informal.
Oh my gosh, I feel like you're a plant in the audience, but I know you're not. But oh my gosh, that is our dream. That is our absolute dream, is to work together, all of us, to figure that out, to make a more seamless system. And I know that that's something that we've talked a lot about with Mandy and then Carl White at NCHAM also, is it is so hard because every state is different, every funding source. With state deafblind projects and with EHDI, they're not coming from the same agency, and so that is a challenge, but I do not think it's a challenge we can't overcome together. And I think that as we continue to take these steps towards talking about it and towards brainstorming, the closer and closer we'll get. And then also we are planning to offer at the end of EHDI a work group session where people who really want to dive into collaboration, both in terms of the identification piece, but also that referral piece you mentioned, people who are passionate about it to come. And so stay tuned. We'd love it if you would be interested to be a part of that. Dana, do you have anything else to say about that?
No, you did a great job.
Okay.
Okay, this is Mandy again. Next question, are the modules useful for other EI service providers such as OTs, early childhood special ed teachers, SLPs, etc.?
This is Dana. I will address this since we love the modules and we find them really useful. So when we're meeting with early intervention providers, we also work really closely with our OTs and PTs and SLPs in our state. and we definitely refer back to the modules. I think it's appropriate for anyone working with our little ones for sure.
Okay, thanks, Dana. Next question. Is there a vision screening program similar to EHDI?
You know, that's another great question that we're working on. No, there is not. And it makes it really complicated to try to figure out how to identify those babies as early as possible. There isn't, we wish there was.
This is Mandy again, and I do feel like Emma planted people in the audience today to be ready for the EHDI work group coming up in March that people need to know more about. Trying to solve some of these problems together. The next question was where we can get access to the PowerPoint. We are going to post the PowerPoint with the recording, and it should be online. I think probably by next week with the Thanksgiving holidays. I'm not going to promise that. Usually it's just a couple of days, but that it will be with the recording of this presentation, so you'll be able to share the PowerPoint and the presentation with others.
Mandy, this is Emma. Dana, do you mind trying to put the EI module in the chat? I'm worried that if I go off to find it, that I'm going to mess up all the screen sharing.
Any other questions while Dana looks up this module to put in chat? So we won't close out until we have that, but we want to give an opportunity for any other questions. This has been great information. Thank you so much for sharing. And again, to give a plug for upcoming events, we do have a couple of coffee break webinars coming up in January and February with the National Deafblind Technical Resource Center. So be looking for notices about those as well. We do list our webinars on infanthearing.org, where you will be able to see past webinars and upcoming webinars as well. Okay, we have another question. I used to work with a deafblind student, and I have noticed that their pace is very different from typical children, how they absorb information. It was a real struggle for them to catch up because some teachers didn't understand the importance of pace. Do you have any comments about pace of working with deafblind students or resources?
Go ahead, Dana.
This is Dana. Definitely, we know that processing time can be longer for our children who have dual sensory loss. There's another great set of modules that NCDB has done, and it's the impact of deafblindness on learning and development, and it's module 1, and it goes through a lot of the foundational teaching strategies, building relationships, which are all huge parts of working with this population. So I will also put that in the chat box, and you guys can look at it for additional information. But if you have more questions, again, just feel free to reach out to your Deafblind project, and they can help you specifically.
And we do have a couple of links in the chat box. Emma referenced the Earworm podcast, and so that link to that podcast she mentioned is in the chat box, as well as the modules, Module 1 and Module 2 that Dana just posted. Okay, well, we want to thank you again so much for your time. We really appreciate this great information. Thank you to our interpreters. Thank you to our captioner. Again, please don't leave until you filled out the evaluation form, and that will also get you your certificate of attendance. Thanks for everyone taking time out of your day, and we will talk soon. Thanks.
Thank you all so much.
Bye-bye.